I paid for my coworker's $12,000 medical bill because HR denied her claim. She cried and said I saved her life. But at the company gala, she got on stage and said, "If you're dumb enough to pay for someone else, you deserve what's coming." Here's the thing, I'm having a hard time processing a situation I never expected to happen. I work in accounting at a company that, for the most part, is pretty standard. I'd been at my job for over 6 years, and honestly, I like my coworkers. But there's one woman, Claire, from the customer support team, who I've gotten close to. A few months ago, she came to me in a crisis, and I made the decision to help her out financially when HR denied her medical claim. I paid her $12,000 medical bill out of my own savings, thinking I was doing a good thing. But now, she's publicly humiliated me at the company gala, calling me dumb for helping her, and I'm left reeling from the fallout. I don't know if I'm overreacting, but I need advice. Am I the idiot here? I've always considered myself a fairly reserved person, never one for making waves, always trying to do the right thing without drawing attention to myself. My name's Miriam, and I've worked at Parkview Technologies for over 6 years. It's a mid-sized company, and to be honest, I didn't expect anything extraordinary to happen. It was just a place to work, get a paycheck, and go home. But things changed when I met Claire. Claire and I didn't start off as close friends. We were cordial, just typical colleagues who nodded in the halls and exchanged small talk in the cafeteria. Claire worked in customer support, which wasn't a department I had much interaction with. But over time, I began to notice how often I would see her working late, or how she would always sit alone at lunch. She didn't have the bubbly social energy like some of our other coworkers, but there was something about her that made me want to know more. One day, while I was getting coffee in the break room, I saw Claire sitting at one of the tables. She was hunched over, her head in her hands, staring down at a pile of papers. When I walked in, she quickly wiped her eyes, but it was too late. I could tell something was wrong. I wasn't the type to pry, but I couldn't ignore how upset she seemed. I sat down across from her and asked quietly, "Hey, are you okay?" She didn't immediately respond, but after a long pause, she finally spoke. "It's just, the medical bills," she said, her voice shaky. "My insurance claim was denied. The treatment I need is so expensive. I don't know what I'm going to do." I didn't know much about Claire's personal life. I knew she'd been quiet about her background, but now I could see how much pain she was hiding. It was a medical condition, something rare, and her treatment was not only expensive but urgent. Without it, she wouldn't be able to live a normal life, and the thought of her not getting the care she needed was unbearable to me. She explained how she had applied for the company's insurance, but HR had rejected her claim, citing some loophole in the policy. That left her with a $12,000 bill, and she had no idea how to pay it. "I've tried everything," she said, her eyes welling up. "No one will help me." I was in shock. I'd seen Claire stressed, but this was different. She was close to breaking down completely. I didn't have all the details, but the injustice of it struck a chord with me. I don't know why, but something inside me just snapped. I knew I had savings, nothing extraordinary, but enough that I could help. And without thinking about the consequences, I made a decision. I told her I would pay for it. I think she was in disbelief when I said it. She didn't react immediately, but after a moment, she just looked at me, her expression a mixture of confusion and gratitude. "You're sure?" "Miriam, this is too much," she said, her voice breaking. I nodded. "You don't have to worry about it. Just take care of yourself." I went home that night feeling a strange sense of resolve. I didn't know how this would affect things, but I knew I couldn't let Claire suffer because of a bureaucratic decision. I transferred the money from my savings account to the hospital the next day. The relief in her eyes when I handed her the receipt was almost overwhelming. She cried, hugged me, and thanked me over and over again. She called me a lifesaver, saying she could never repay me for what I'd done. But at the time, I didn't need repayment. I told myself it was just a one-time thing, a good deed. After all, she was going through something incredibly difficult. I thought things would settle down, that Claire would get the help she needed and I could move on with my life. But that's not how things went. A few months later, Parkview Technologies hosted the annual company Gala, a fancy event everyone looked forward to. It was a night of awards, speeches, and celebration. People were excited, and I was no different. But what I didn't expect was that this event would change everything for me. I walked into the grand ballroom in my dress, trying to shake off the nagging feeling I had in the back of my mind. As I moved through the crowd, I spotted Claire across the room, talking to a few colleagues. She looked stunning, dressed in a deep blue gown that shimmered under the lights. Her smile was bright, and for the first time, I saw confidence radiating from her. It was a far cry from the woman who had been drowning in stress just a few months earlier. Then, out of nowhere, the announcement came: Claire was called to the stage to receive an award for her outstanding contributions to the company. The applause was loud and genuine. Claire stood up, beaming, and walked to the stage. I felt a strange discomfort in my stomach, but I couldn't put my finger on why. I watched as Claire took the microphone and began to speak, her voice confident and clear. "What an honor this is," she began, her words calm and controlled. "I've learned a lot this year about resilience, strength, and self-sufficiency. And sometimes, we need to remember that no one is truly self-sufficient." I froze, trying to decipher where she was going with this. Was she thanking me in front of everyone? But then her tone shifted, becoming sharper. "If you're dumb enough to pay for someone else's problems, you deserve what's coming," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. "And if you think your charity will make you a hero, just remember, there's always a price to pay." The room fell silent. I could feel my heart thumping in my chest, my stomach sinking. Was she talking about me? My mind was racing, but before I could process it, she continued, her voice cold, almost mocking. "Some people think that by helping others, they're doing the right thing. But when your help comes with strings attached, you're only setting yourself up for failure. Trust me, it's never worth it." I couldn't breathe. The words felt like a slap in the face. I thought I had been helping Claire out of the goodness of my heart, but now she was publicly shaming me in front of everyone. The crowd's applause was hesitant, unsure of how to react. I could feel the stares on me, and I wanted nothing more than to disappear. My chest tightened, my face flushed with humiliation. Claire didn't even look in my direction as she finished her speech, but I could see the faintest hint of a smile on her lips. The smile of someone who had just won a battle. I didn't know what to do. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. I stood there, frozen, trying to process the hurt, the betrayal. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People spoke to me, but their words felt distant, like I was underwater. Claire avoided me, never once acknowledging me. I tried to convince myself that maybe it was all a misunderstanding, that there was some deeper reason for her words. But the truth was, I didn't know anymore. It wasn't until the next day, when I saw Claire in the parking lot, that I finally confronted her. My heart was pounding, and I had to force myself to speak. "Why?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Why did you say that? Why did you humiliate me in front of everyone?" Claire's expression was cold, unreadable. She didn't seem remorseful, didn't seem to care at all. "You think I owe you something for that money? You think I should be grateful for your charity? I never asked for your help, Miriam. And I never will." Her words hit me harder than I ever expected. I had believed, for all this time, that I was doing the right thing. But now, in the cold light of day, I realized that Claire had seen me as a fool all along. The pain of her betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I had tried to help her when she needed it most, and now she was making me feel like the idiot for doing so. I walked away from her, feeling a weight in my chest. The sadness, the disappointment, it all felt like too much to carry. The days following the gala were some of the toughest I've experienced in years. I went to work with a constant pit in my stomach. Every time I passed Claire in the hall, she avoided my gaze, her face cold and distant. It was clear that the dynamic had shifted in a way I couldn't fix, no matter how much I wished I could. At first, I tried to pretend like nothing had happened. I went through the motions of my daily tasks, talked to my colleagues, and even smiled when I was expected to. But it was hard to focus. Every time my eyes would land on Claire across the office, I felt this knot in my chest, an ache that wouldn't go away. I wanted to tell someone about what had happened. I wanted to scream to the world about how I'd been humiliated by someone I thought I was helping. But I couldn't. I couldn't bear the thought of anyone at work looking at me like I was a fool. What if they started whispering about me? What if they thought I was naive? The worst part was that I still cared. Despite everything, I still felt sympathy for Claire. I knew her situation wasn't easy. She had fought so hard for the medical treatment she needed. The treatment that had cost so much. And even if her words had stung, I couldn't ignore the fact that she was going through something I could never fully understand. I had helped because I thought it was the right thing to do, but now I was paying the price for it. I didn't know who to turn to, so I started spending more time at home, trying to avoid conversations with my husband, David, about work. I didn't want to burden him with this. But he could sense something was off. He had always been my rock, the person I could turn to when everything else felt like it was falling apart. So one evening, as we were having dinner, he asked the question I had been avoiding. "Hey, Miriam, what's going on? You've been quieter than usual. Something happened at work?" I hesitated. I didn't want to tell him. I didn't want to drag him into this mess. But David could see right through me. His eyes softened, and he reached across the table, placing his hand on mine. "It's okay, love. Whatever it is, you don't have to keep it to yourself." I felt tears well up in my eyes. I didn't realize how much I needed someone to listen, someone who wouldn't judge me. I took a deep breath and told him everything. About Claire, the medical bills, how I had paid them without thinking twice, and how Claire had humiliated me in front of the entire company at the gala. I told him about the strange mix of anger and sadness I felt, anger at her words and sadness that someone I thought I was helping could turn on me like that. David listened patiently, never interrupting. He didn't offer any solutions right away, but just having him there, understanding what I was going through, felt like a relief. "I'm so sorry, Miriam," he said softly when I finished. "I can't imagine how hurt you must be. But you need to understand that you did this out of kindness. You didn't do anything wrong. Claire, well, she's clearly dealing with her own issues, and you can't carry that weight for her." His words didn't make everything feel better, but they helped me see things from a different perspective. I had acted out of compassion, and maybe, just maybe, Claire's behavior wasn't a reflection of me, but of her. Still, it didn't change the fact that I was struggling. I had to face the truth. I had been betrayed, and that hurt more than I could have anticipated. The next few days were filled with a strange tension at work. Claire kept her distance, and I followed suit. We didn't speak unless it was absolutely necessary, and even then, the exchanges were brief and awkward. But it wasn't just Claire's coldness that was weighing on me, it was the sense of isolation I felt. I had lost a connection I thought was real. I had put myself out there to help, and instead of gratitude, I had received judgment. One day, a week or so after the gala, I found myself sitting at my desk, staring blankly at the spreadsheets in front of me. I didn't know what to do next. I couldn't let this go on, but I didn't know how to fix it. I had already tried to talk to Claire, but she had shut me down completely. So, I decided to take a different approach. I wasn't going to wait for her to come to me. I was going to stand up for myself, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. After work, I gathered my courage and sent Claire an email. It wasn't long, but it was honest. "Claire, I need to say something to you. I know things have been awkward between us since the gala, and I've been trying to figure out how to make sense of everything. I paid your medical bill because I believed it was the right thing to do. I never expected any form of public recognition for it, but what happened at the gala hurt me more than you can imagine. I thought we had a mutual understanding, but it feels like you took my kindness and used it against me. I'm not asking for anything, but I need you to know how your words affected me. I'm not the villain here, and I won't apologize for helping you when you needed it most. Miriam, I sent it and immediately regretted it. What if she hated me even more after reading it? What if she thought I was being too dramatic? But I couldn't turn back now. I had said my piece. It wasn't long before I got a response from Claire. When I saw her name pop up in my inbox, my heart started racing. I don't owe you an explanation, Miriam. What I said at the gala was the truth. You acted out of some misplaced sense of heroism, and I don't need anyone to save me. You did what you did, and I don't owe you anything for it. I don't need your sympathy. But I'll say this, I never asked for your help, and I certainly didn't expect to be put on a pedestal for it. Maybe next time, you'll think before you play the savior. That was it. Short. Cold. Unapologetic. I read the email over and over, feeling a mix of disbelief and anger. How could she be so ungrateful? How could she still not see what I had done for her? I didn't expect her to sing my praises, but I didn't expect this either. I sat there for a long time, staring at the screen, unsure of what to do next. My emotions were all over the place. Part of me wanted to reply, to defend myself, to tell her everything I was feeling. But the other part of me, the part that still had a shred of dignity left, told me to leave it. To walk away from this. To stop giving Claire the power to hurt me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something, I couldn't change her. I couldn't make her see things from my perspective. And I certainly couldn't keep carrying her baggage for her. The situation wasn't just about money anymore, it was about respect. And I wasn't going to allow her to strip me of that. So, I didn't reply. I closed my email inbox and went about my day, feeling more resolved than I had in days. I wasn't going to let Claire's bitterness define me. She had her own issues to sort out, and as much as I wanted to help, I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace for someone who didn't appreciate it. But the question still lingered in my mind, had I been wrong all along? Was my desire to help a flaw in itself? And would I ever be able to let go of the hurt she had caused? I didn't know the answers yet, but one thing was for sure, I wasn't going to let Claire's actions dictate my happiness any longer. It was time for me to move on. The days that followed were quieter. I continued with my work, keeping my head down, focusing on the tasks at hand. But in the back of my mind, I knew something needed to shift. I couldn't just walk away from this without getting some kind of closure. I had been humiliated, betrayed, and treated with coldness by someone I had tried to help. The more I reflected, the more I realized that Claire needed to face the consequences of her actions, not in a cruel way, but in a way that made her understand the price of her behavior. I wasn't interested in revenge at first. I didn't want to become the kind of person who held grudges or made others suffer. But the more I thought about the way Claire had treated me, the more I realized something important. She hadn't just insulted me in front of everyone at the gala. She had attacked the very concept of kindness, of helping others without expecting something in return. And while I wasn't expecting her to thank me, what she had done felt like a slap in the face. No one should get away with that kind of callousness. Then one morning, an idea began to form in my mind. It wasn't about playing her game or trying to get even. It was about showing Claire how actions have consequences. About showing her what it really means to be kind to others, and how far-reaching the impact of our choices can be. Over the next few weeks, I set my plan into motion, and it started small. At first, I simply began to distance myself even more from Claire. I stopped responding to her messages and emails, kept our interactions strictly professional, and avoided any unnecessary conversations. Slowly but surely, the subtle exclusion from her social circle began to take effect. Claire, who had been so confident and surrounded by people at the gala, found herself isolated. At the same time, I started reaching out to other people in the company, people who had been close to Claire, people who might have been too intimidated to speak up, or people who had been silent during the gala. I wasn't trying to stir up drama, I just wanted to create a shift in the workplace dynamic. I shared with a few colleagues how much my actions had hurt, explaining how the gala speech had affected me, how Claire's words had been damaging not just to me but to the broader culture of kindness that people like me had been trying to foster. Slowly, word began to spread. People started talking. It wasn't long before I began to notice subtle shifts. Claire started being left out of lunch gatherings, conversations stopped when she entered the room, and even her direct supervisor seemed to treat her differently. She noticed it, of course. I could see the frustration building on her face whenever she walked into the break room and no one bothered to acknowledge her. But I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The quiet exclusion was doing its work. Claire started to get the message. The people who had once praised her and worked closely with her started to distance themselves, and the effects were clearly taking a toll on her. I wasn't the one causing her downfall, her own behavior had done that. One morning, about a month after the gala, I overheard a conversation in the break room between two colleagues. They were talking about Claire's latest project, and one of them mentioned how disappointing it was that Claire hadn't taken responsibility for the mistakes that had come up during her presentations. Apparently, she'd been trying to pass the blame on to others, which wasn't a new habit for her. The truth was, Claire had been getting by for a long time on her charm, her image, and her ability to manipulate situations to her favor. But when that image started to crack, when people saw her for what she really was, everything started falling apart. Her manipulations didn't work anymore. Her charm didn't cut it. And it wasn't long before her supervisor had a formal sit-down with her. I overheard snippets of that conversation too. The feedback wasn't pretty. Claire was given a warning for her behavior, and they suggested she take some time to reflect on her actions. The power was shifting. And though I didn't wish her ill, I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Claire was reaping what she had sown. The consequences of her cold and selfish actions were playing out, not through cruelty, but through the quiet disapproval of her colleagues and superiors. Then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get any worse for Claire, an email went out to the entire company. Annual performance reviews were coming up, and along with them, a series of mandatory one-on-one meetings with HR. These reviews were supposed to be an opportunity for employees to talk about their progress, their challenges, and their goals for the upcoming year. But for Claire, this was the final blow. During her performance review, which I had heard about through the grapevine, her HR representative didn't hold back. She was told that her behavior had been unprofessional, her interactions with her coworkers had been less than exemplary, and that her overall performance had slipped. As a result, she was informed that her promotion, something she'd been firearmed for, was being delayed indefinitely. To make matters worse, Claire was also informed that she would no longer be considered for any leadership opportunities in the foreseeable future. They encouraged her to seek guidance from a career counselor to improve her interpersonal skills and focus on her work ethic. The blow was hard, and I could hear the frustration in her voice when she spoke about it later that week. Claire was never the same after that. She became withdrawn, no longer the confident, popular figure she once was. The company began to view her more critically, and though no one ever directly confronted her about the gala speech, it became clear that the corporate culture had shifted. People no longer viewed her as someone to be admired or respected, and she had no one left to blame but herself. The final piece of the puzzle came one day when I was walking through the office and saw Claire sitting in the corner, talking to her supervisor. Her expression was defeated, and I could see that she was no longer the person who had so brazenly stood on stage at the gala. She had learned the hard way that actions have consequences, and now, she had lost not only the respect of her colleagues but also her own sense of pride. I had no desire to rub it in, no need to be cruel. But the satisfaction I felt in that moment came not from seeing Claire's downfall, it came from knowing that she had learned the lesson the hard way. I didn't need to confront her or get involved in her mess anymore. She had built her own cage, and it was no longer my responsibility to free her from it. In the end, the balance had shifted in a way that felt fair. I had acted out of kindness, and though Claire had used my generosity to her advantage, she ultimately had to face the fallout of her own bitterness and pride. My role in her downfall wasn't one of malice, it was simply the result of her own actions, amplified by the way she treated others. As I walked out of the office that day, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I had done the right thing by helping Claire when she needed it, and now, I had done the right thing by stepping back and allowing the consequences of her behavior to unfold. She had burned bridges, alienated people, and made enemies out of allies, and in the end, that was her burden to carry, not mine. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't seeking revenge. But sometimes, the universe has a way of balancing things out. And in this case, the lesson Claire had to learn was one that only life could teach.